One act of mercy, answered by humanity's wrath and power the rescue. The universe has a way of testing species when they least expect it. For humanity, that test came on an ordinary Tuesday in the year 2157, when a cargo ship carrying mining equipment to the outer colonies stumbled upon something that would change the course of human history forever. Captain Elena Vasquez had been running cargo routes for 15 years, and she thought she had seen everything the vast emptiness of space had to offer. The Pioneer's hope was an aging vessel, held together by determination and creative engineering rather than corporate maintenance budgets. Her crew of 12 had become more like family than colleagues, bound together by the shared experience of long voyages through the darkness between stars. They were 3 days out from Titan Station when the sensors picked up something unusual. Communications Officer Jin Park frowned at his console, adjusting frequencies to clarify the signal cutting through the cosmic background radiation. Captain, we're receiving what appears to be a distress signal, but it's using a mathematical pattern I've never seen before. It's definitely artificial, but it's not from any human vessel in our databases. Elena moved to the sensor station, her weathered hands gripping the back of Jin's chair as she studied the readouts. The signal was coming from a sector that should have been empty, a region of space between shipping lanes where nothing interesting ever happened. Yet there it was, a rhythmic pulse of data that screamed intelligence and desperation in equal measure. Her first officer, Marcus Thompson, was already running calculations on his tablet. Captain, deviating from our course would add 2 weeks to our delivery schedule. The company won't be happy about the delay, and we're already behind on our quarterly quotas. You know what happened to the crew of the Star Runner when they missed their deadlines. Elena knew he was right. The mining consortium that owned their ship had little patience for delays, regardless of the reason. But something about that signal pulled at her conscience. Throughout human history, those who answered calls for help often found their acts of compassion rippling through time in ways they never imagined. Plot a course to the signal's origin, she ordered, her voice carrying the authority that came from years of command. If someone's in trouble out here, we're not leaving them to die in the dark. The company can bill me for the lost time. The journey to the signal's source took them through an asteroid field that hadn't been properly charted. Their navigation system struggled to plot safe paths through the tumbling rocks, some the size of small moons. As they drew closer, their sensors finally got a clear reading on what was sending the distress call. It was a ship unlike anything in Earth's databases. The vessel was roughly cylindrical, perhaps 300 meters long, with a hull that seemed to shimmer with an opalescent quality. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and bioluminescent panels flickered weakly along its length. More concerning were the massive tears in its hull, wounds that exposed the ship's interior to the vacuum of space. Elena ordered her crew to prepare for a rescue operation, though none of them knew what they might find inside that alien vessel. The Pioneer's hope wasn't equipped for first contact situations. They had basic environmental suits, some emergency medical supplies, and a universal translator that had never been tested on non-human languages. But they had something more valuable than equipment. They had the determination to help those in need. The boarding party consisted of Elena, Marcus, and their engineer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. As their small shuttle approached the alien vessel, they could see bodies floating in the vacuum near the hull breaches. The beings were unlike anything they had imagined. They stood perhaps 2 meters tall when upright, with elongated limbs, and skin that seemed to contain its own faint luminescence. Their faces were vaguely humanoid but with larger eyes and more delicate features. The shuttle's docking collar managed to form a seal with one of the alien ship's intact airlocks. The universal translator struggled with the alien computer system, but Yuki's engineering intuition helped her figure out the basic controls. As the inner airlock door opened, they stepped into a corridor that still held atmosphere, though their suits registered it as having a slightly different composition than Earth normal. They found survivors in what appeared to be the ship's command center. 5 aliens lay on the floor, their bodies showing signs of severe trauma from whatever had damaged their vessel. One of them stirred as the humans approached, its large eyes focusing on Elena with obvious intelligence despite its injuries. The Universal Translator crackled to life, processing the aliens' attempts at communication. After several false starts, words began to form. Please. Help. Our ship. Attacked. By asteroid storm. Navigation failed. Many dead. We are explorers. Peaceful. Elena knelt beside the injured being, her gloved hand gently touching what she hoped was its shoulder in a gesture of reassurance. We're here to help. We're taking you to our ship. We have medical facilities. We'll do everything we can. The rescue operation took 6 hours. The human crew managed to save 11 Kailari, as they learned the aliens called themselves. The survivors were scientists and explorers, members of a peaceful civilization that had devoted itself to understanding the universe rather than conquering it. They had been studying a rare cosmic phenomenon when their navigation system had malfunctioned, sending them directly into an uncharted asteroid field. Dr. Tanaka and the ship's medic, Samuel Chen, worked around the clock to treat the Kalari's injuries. The aliens' biology was different enough from humans to make treatment challenging, but similar enough that basic medical principles still applied. Broken bones were set, wounds were sealed, and infections were fought with broad-spectrum antibiotics that thankfully proved effective. As the Kailari recovered, communication improved. The leader of their expedition, a being named Zalara, spent hours with Elena, sharing information about their respective species. The Kailari were ancient compared to humanity, having achieved spaceflight when humans were still using stone tools, but they had chosen a path of peaceful exploration rather than expansion, seeking knowledge and understanding rather than territory and resources. Your kind shows remarkable compassion, Zalara said one day, as she stood with Elena on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Many species would have ignored our distress call or seen us as a threat to be eliminated. Yet you risked your own safety and your standing with your own kind to save strangers. Elena shrugged, a gesture that Zalara had learned indicated human humility. Where we come from, there's an old tradition. When someone's in trouble at sea, you help them. Doesn't matter who they are or where they're from. Space is just another ocean, and we're all sailors trying to find our way. The Kailari shared some of their technology with the humans as thanks for the rescue. Nothing military, as that went against their principles, but improvements to navigation systems, medical scanners, and communication equipment that would benefit all of humanity. More importantly, they shared star charts and information about other species in the galaxy, knowledge that would prove invaluable in the years to come. When they finally reached a Kailari outpost where the survivors could be transferred to their own people, Zalara pulled Elena aside for a private conversation. The alien's large eyes seemed to hold depths of wisdom accumulated over centuries of life. Captain Elena Vasquez, I want you to remember this day. My people have lived among the stars for millennia, and we have learned that the universe has a way of balancing scales. Your kindness today, offered freely without expectation of reward, will not be forgotten. There may come a time when humanity needs help, when your species faces a darkness that seems insurmountable. When that day comes, remember that you have friends among the stars. Elena didn't fully understand what Zalara meant at the time. The warning seemed cryptic, almost mystical, but she filed it away in her memory, along with the coordinates of Kalari space and the communication frequencies they had shared. The Pioneer's Hope completed its delivery run 2 weeks late, and as expected, the mining consortium was furious. Elena's pay was docked, and she received an official reprimand in her file. But her crew stood by her, and word of the rescue spread through human space. The first peaceful contact with an alien species became a point of pride for humanity, proof that they could be more than just another aggressive species clawing for resources. Elena retired 5 years later, but she never forgot the Kailari or Zalara's cryptic warning. She wrote detailed reports about the encounter, ensuring that the information was preserved in Earth's military and diplomatic archives. She had no way of knowing that those reports would become crucial reading for Earth's leaders 20 years later, when humanity would face its darkest hour. The debt-remembered 20 years had transformed humanity's presence in the galaxy. What had started as tentative steps beyond Earth's solar system had become a confident stride across dozens of star systems. Colonies flourished on worlds that had never known life, and human ships carried trade goods between species that had once seemed like fantasy. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, flagship of Earth's Third Fleet. Her hair had gone silver in the two. Decades since she had rescued the Kailari, but her eyes remained sharp, and her reputation as humanity's first peaceful contact specialist had earned her a position of respect in Earth's rapidly expanding military structure. The transformation from cargo captain to admiral hadn't been her plan. But after the Kailari incident, Earth's government had recognized the need for military leaders who understood that not every alien encounter needed to end in violence. Elena had been recruited, trained, and promoted through the ranks with surprising speed, her natural leadership abilities and unique experience making her invaluable. She was reviewing patrol reports from the outer colonies when her communications officer Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim suddenly straightened at her station. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission on the old Kailari emergency frequency. It's using your personal identification code from the 2157 rescue." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. She hadn't heard from the Kailari in years. They had maintained occasional diplomatic contact with Earth, but their radically different approach to galactic civilization meant their paths rarely crossed. For them to use an emergency frequency and her personal code meant something was seriously wrong. "Put it through to my ready room," she ordered, already moving toward the private space adjacent to the bridge. "Maximum encryption and alert Earth command that we may have a developing situation." The image that appeared on her ready room screen made her stomach clench with dread. It was Zalara, but the centuries-old being looked haggard, her natural luminescence dim and flickering. Behind her, Elena could see what appeared to be a command center in chaos, with other Kailari rushing back and forth in obvious panic. "Elena Vasquez, my old friend," Zalara began, her translated voice carrying undertones of desperation that the software couldn't fully mask. "I pray this message reaches you in time. The darkness I warned you about 20 years ago has come, but not for humanity. It has come for us." Zalara explained the situation with efficient brevity. The Vorthon Empire, a militaristic species from the galaxy's outer rim, had decided that the Kailari's vast knowledge and ancient technology were too valuable to remain in the hands of pacifists. They had issued an ultimatum: surrender and become vassals of the Empire or face complete annihilation. The Kailari, true to their principles, had refused to become part of a military empire. They would not see their knowledge used for conquest and oppression. The Vorthons had responded by beginning a systematic invasion of Kailari space, their vast fleets crushing the minimal defenses that the peaceful explorers had maintained. "We have no military to speak of," Zalara continued, her large eyes reflecting a sorrow that transcended species. "Our ships are built for exploration and research, not war. Our philosophy has always been that knowledge and understanding would protect us. We were wrong. The Vorthons will destroy us entirely in a matter of weeks." Elena leaned forward, her mind already racing through possibilities. "Zalara, what do you need from us? How can Earth help?" The old Kailari seemed to shimmer, and Elena realized it was the alien equivalent of tears. 20 years ago, your people saved 11 of us when you had no obligation to do so. You risked your ship, your career, and your crew's safety for strangers. Now I must ask for something infinitely greater. We need military protection. We need someone to stand between us and extinction. I know this is an enormous request, but you are the only ones we can turn to. The other species we've contacted have all refused, unwilling to challenge the Vorthon Empire. Elena was quiet for a long moment, understanding the full weight of what was being asked. The Vorthons were known to Earth's military planners. They controlled over 200 star systems and had a fleet that dwarfed Earth's entire navy. Challenging them would be like a child with a slingshot facing an armored tank. "Send me all the tactical data you have on the Vorthon forces and their timeline for invasion," Elena said finally. "I need to present this to Earth Command, but Zalara, I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to help. 20 years ago, you told me the universe has a way of balancing scales. Today we'll find out if humanity is ready to balance ours. The emergency session of the United Earth Council convened within 6 hours of Elena's report. Representatives from every major colony and Earth itself gathered in the virtual council chamber, their holographic forms arranged in a circle that had become the symbol of human unity in space. President Chen Wei, Earth's first leader of Asian descent, called the session to order. His usually calm demeanor showed cracks of strain as he addressed the assembly. Councilors, we face perhaps the most critical decision in human history. Admiral Vasquez, please present your report. Elena laid out the situation with military precision. The Kailari had less than 3 weeks before the Vorthan main fleet reached their home system. Their 1,000-year-old civilization, with all its accumulated knowledge and peaceful philosophy, would be wiped out. The Vorthans had made it clear that they intended to leave no survivors, viewing the Kalari's pacifism as a weakness that didn't deserve to exist. The Council's reaction was mixed. Some representatives immediately supported intervention, citing humanity's moral obligation to help those who had helped them. Others pointed out the cold, hard mathematics of the situation. Earth had 47 capital ships spread across all its fleets. The Vorthans had over 600 in the invasion fleet alone. General Harrison Maxwell, Earth's senior military strategist, presented the tactical analysis. In any conventional engagement, we would be destroyed within hours. The Vorthan ships are more advanced, more numerous, and their crews have centuries of combat experience. This wouldn't be a battle. It would be a slaughter. But Elena stood her ground. 20 years ago, I was hauling mining equipment through empty space when I heard a distress call. I could have ignored it. Should have, according to company protocols. But I didn't, and that single act of compassion opened the door to peaceful relations with the Kailari. They shared their knowledge with us, helped us understand that we weren't alone in the universe, and showed us that not every alien species wanted to conquer or destroy us. She paused, looking at each council member in turn. Now they're asking for our help. Not because we're the strongest or the most powerful, but because we're the only ones who showed them kindness when they needed it. If we turn our backs on them now, what does that say about humanity? What does that say about who we are as a species? The debate raged for hours. Some counselors argued that humanity's first responsibility was to its own survival. Others contended that standing by while genocide occurred would destroy humanity's soul, even if their bodies survived. The vote was called as Earth's sun began to set over the Pacific Ocean. The result was closer than anyone had expected. 15 votes in favor of intervention, 12 against, with 3 abstentions. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Humanity would go to war to save the Kailari. The mobilization that followed was unlike anything in human history. Every shipyard went into emergency production mode. Civilian vessels were hastily converted for military use. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, many of them people who had grown up hearing stories of the Kailari rescue and wanted to be part of humanity's defining moment. Admiral Vasquez was given overall command of what was being called Operation Remembrance. She had 2 weeks to assemble a fleet, develop tactics that might give them a fighting chance, and coordinate with colonies spread across 50 light-years of space. It seemed impossible, but Elena had learned long ago that impossible was just another word for challenging. The most surprising development came from the outer colonies. These rough frontier settlements, often dismissed by Earth's core worlds as backwards and unimportant, responded to the call with unexpected enthusiasm. They sent their best pilots, their most innovative engineers, and even their mining ships equipped with improvised weapons. Captain Jake Morrison of the colony ship New Frontier summed up the frontier attitude in a message to Elena. Admiral, we might be farmers and miners out here, but we understand what it means to help neighbors in need. The Kalari helped all of humanity. Now it's our turn to return the favor. We'll be there with everything we've got. As the human fleet assembled at the designated rally point, Elena stood on the bridge of the Resilience and looked out at the collection of ships gathering around her flagship. There were sleek military vessels, bulky converted cargo haulers, nimble scout ships, and even a few ancient colony ships that had been pulled out of mothballs for this mission. It wasn't the most powerful fleet ever assembled, but it might have been the most determined. Her communications officer announced that they had received a message from Earth. President Chen Wei's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grave but proud. Admiral Vasquez, the people of Earth and all her colonies are watching. You carry with you not just our hopes but our very identity as a species. Today we find out if humanity can stand for something greater than its own survival. Good luck, and may the universe remember this day as the moment humanity chose compassion over safety and courage over fear. The battle for tomorrow. The jump into Kalari space revealed a scene from humanity's darkest nightmares. The Vorthon Empire's invasion fleet hung in space like a storm cloud of death. 600 vessels arranged in perfect formation around the gentle world of Kalara Prime. The planet itself, which the Kalari had described as a jewel of blue seas and phosphorescent forests, was already showing scars from orbital bombardment. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the Resilience's bridge, taking in the tactical situation with the calm that had become her trademark. Around her, junior officers whispered nervously as their sensors counted enemy ships. The numbers were even worse than their intelligence had suggested. The Vorthons had brought not just a conquest fleet, but an extermination armada. "Admiral, we're being hailed by the Vorthon command ship," reported Lieutenant Commander Kim, her voice steady despite the tension that filled the bridge like a physical presence. The screen filled with the image of Supreme Commander Krall of the Vorthon Empire. The alien was insectoid in appearance, with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like polished obsidian and compound eyes that reflected the bridge lights in thousands of facets. When he spoke, the universal translator gave his words a grinding, metallic quality. "Unknown vessels, you have entered an active military zone during a lawful police action. The Kalari have been designated for termination due to their refusal to contribute to galactic order. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed alongside them. This is your only warning." Elena stepped forward, her silver hair catching the light as she moved into full view of the communication system. "Supreme Commander Krall, I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Fleet. 20 years ago, the Kalari saved human lives when they had no obligation to do so. We are here to repay that debt. Stand down your fleet and withdraw from Kalari space, or we will stop you." The chittering sound that came through the translator might have been laughter. 68 vessels against 600? Your mathematics are as poor as your judgment, human. You will die for nothing. Elena's expression didn't change. "We'll see about that. All ships, execute Operation David's Sling." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The human fleet didn't form battle lines or attempt to match the Vorthon formation. Instead, they scattered like seeds on the wind, each ship following seemingly random vectors that made no tactical sense to conventional military thinking. The converted mining ships, which the Vorthons had dismissed as non-combatants, suddenly revealed their true purpose. They had been equipped with mass drivers originally designed to launch asteroids into processing orbits. Now those same devices hurled clouds of metallic chaff and sensor-disrupting particles into space, creating an electromagnetic storm that blinded sophisticated Vorthon targeting systems. Captain Morrison's New Frontier, one of the old colony ships, executed a maneuver that should have torn it apart. Using modified engines that pushed far beyond safety limits, it dove directly into the Vorthon formation at speeds that made it nearly impossible to track. As it passed between enemy vessels, it released mines disguised as debris, devices that would attach to Vorthon hulls and wait for the perfect moment to detonate. The smaller human ships, scouts and corvettes that wouldn't last seconds in a straight fight, became wolves harrying the edges of the Vorthon fleet. They targeted communication, arrays and sensor pods, not trying to destroy enemy vessels but to blind and deafen them. It was guerrilla warfare adapted to three-dimensional space, tactics that no spacefaring military had ever attempted on this scale. Commander Yuki Tanaka, who had been part of the original Kalari rescue and now captained the destroyer Remember, tomorrow led a squadron of ships in what appeared to be a suicide run at the Vorthon command vessel. The enemy's defensive fire was overwhelming, and 3 human ships vanished in balls of plasma and debris. But it was a feint. While the Vorthons focused on the apparent threat, a team of volunteers in modified maintenance pods had attached themselves to the command ship's hull. These volunteers, led by Sergeant Maria Santos, carried humanity's most desperate gambit. They had studied every bit of Kalari data on Vorthon technology and found a critical weakness. The Vorthons' shields were designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, but they had a refresh cycle that lasted exactly 1.3 seconds every 10 minutes. It was barely noticeable, a flaw that would never matter in conventional warfare. But humans had never been conventional. Santos and her team waited, magnetic boots holding them to the enemy hull while their suits counted down to the exact moment. When the shields flickered, they manually placed explosive charges directly against critical systems, the kind of low-tech solution that the Vorthons' advanced tactical computers had never considered. The explosion that followed didn't destroy the command ship, but it crippled its coordination systems. Suddenly, the perfect Vorthon formation began to fragment as individual ships lost their synchronized command structure. It was a small victory, but it gave the humans something they desperately needed: chaos. Admiral Vasquez had studied Earth history, particularly the unconventional victories that had defined human military tradition. Thermopylae, where 300 warriors held off thousands. The Winter War, where Finnish farmers stopped a superpower. Vietnam, where determination defeated technology. Humanity had always found ways to make superior enemies pay dearly for their victories. All wings, execute Phase 2. Remember the Alamo, she commanded, using a historical reference that every human soldier understood. It meant they would make their stand here no matter the cost. The battle reached a crescendo of violence that sensors could barely track. Human ships died by the dozens, their crews' final messages echoing across communication channels. But for every human vessel destroyed, they had damaged 3 Vorthon ships and disrupted 6 more. The kill ratio was still overwhelmingly in the Vorthons' favor, but the psychological impact was devastating. The Vorthon Empire had conquered species for 1,000 years. They had never encountered anyone willing to ram civilian ships into their formations. They had never seen soldiers in environment suits personally deliver explosives to their hulls. They had never faced an enemy that seemed to grow more determined with every loss. On Kalara Prime, Zilara and the surviving Kalari leadership watched the battle with a mixture of awe and horror. Their peaceful philosophy had never prepared them to witness such violence, but they understood what the humans were sacrificing. Every minute the battle continued was another transport full of Kalari civilians reaching safety, another repository of ancient knowledge evacuated to hidden sanctuaries. Elena received a priority message from Captain Thompson, her old first officer who now commanded the cruiser Second Chance. "Admiral, I'm reading a massive energy buildup in the Vorthon flagship. It looks like they're preparing to use a planet-killer weapon. If they can't have the Kalari's knowledge, they're going to destroy it all." The planet killer was the Vorthons' ultimate solution, a weapon that could crack a world's crust and render it uninhabitable for millennia. If it fired, billions of Kalari would die, and their entire civilization would be reduced to refugees and memories. Elena made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her days. All ships capable of sublight sprint converge on the flagship. Everyone else continue disruption operations. If that weapon fires, humanity fails here today. The Resilience led the charge, pushing its engines beyond all safety margins. The ship's hull groaned under the acceleration, and warning alarms filled the bridge. The Vorthon flagship's escorts moved to intercept, their weapons creating a wall of destructive energy that no ship should have been able to penetrate. But the humans had one advantage the Vorthons hadn't counted on. They weren't afraid to die. Ship after ship absorbed devastating hits, their burning hulk still maintaining course even as life support failed and crews perished. Each destroyed vessel cleared a path for the ones behind, a cascade of sacrifice that brought the Resilience within striking range. "Admiral, we have 1 shot," reported the weapons officer, blood running from a gash on his forehead where exploding consoles had sprayed shrapnel. "The planet killer is charging. 90 seconds to discharge." Elena looked at the tactical display one last time. They had lost 41 ships. Over 30,000 humans had died in less than an hour. But the Vorthon fleet was in complete disarray, and the planet killer was vulnerable for just a few more seconds. Target their primary power coupling, she ordered. Everything we have. For Marcus Chen, for the Kailari, for humanity's soul. The Resilience fired everything in its arsenal. Missiles, energy beams, even jury-rigged mining charges that had been welded to the hull as a last resort. The concentrated firepower would have been insignificant against the flagship's shields, under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. The shields were weakened from the constant harassment, and the power systems were stressed from charging the planet killer. The first few shots were absorbed or deflected, but then something broke through. A single missile, launched by a destroyed human ship whose automated systems were still following their last orders, found a weak point. The explosion cascaded through the flagship's power systems just as the planet killer reached critical charge. The resulting detonation was visible from Kalara Prime's surface, a brief new star that lit up the sky before fading to nothing. The Vorthon flagship, pride of their empire, ceased to exist along with a significant portion of their fleet caught in the blast radius. Supreme Commander Krall's second-in-command, viewing the destruction from a surviving battleship, made a calculation that would have been unthinkable an hour ago. The humans had lost most of their fleet, but they had destroyed the flagship and crippled the invasion force's coordination. Worse, long-range sensors were detecting more human ships arriving, reinforcements from Earth's colonies racing to join the battle. The Vorthons could still win, but the cost would be catastrophic. And for what? The Kalari's knowledge was already being evacuated, and the humans had proven they would die to the last ship rather than retreat. The Empire would gain nothing but ruins and a reputation for losing a third of their fleet to a species that had barely achieved interstellar flight. All Vorthon vessels withdraw to staging coordinates, the new commander ordered, the words tasting like ashes. This action is suspended pending review by Imperial Command. The remaining Vorthon ships began to pull back, their formation resembling a wounded beast retreating to lick its wounds. They left behind a debris field that stretched for millions of kilometers, a graveyard of ships from both fleets that would serve as a monument to the battle. On the bridge of the Resilience, Admiral Elena Vasquez slumped in her command chair, exhaustion hitting her like a physical weight. They had done the impossible. They had saved the Kalari, but the cost had been beyond imagination. Admiral, incoming message from Kalara Prime, Lieutenant Commander Kim reported, tears streaming down her face as the adrenaline of battle gave way to grief for lost friends. Zalara appeared on the screen, her luminescence brighter than Elena had ever seen it, pulsing with patterns that the translator indicated were the Kailari equivalent of profound emotion. Elena Vasquez, Speaker for Humanity. We have no words sufficient for what your people have done today. You faced impossible odds to save strangers who could offer you nothing but gratitude. Billions of Kailari live because humans chose to die for them. This debt can never be repaid, but from this day forward, wherever humans go in the galaxy, they will find friends among the Kailari. Our knowledge, our technology, our very lives belong to those who saved us. Elena managed a tired smile. We didn't do it for payment, Zalara. We did it because 20 years ago you saved 11 humans when you didn't have to. Today, we saved your civilization because we couldn't bear to see the galaxy lose something as beautiful as the Kailari. That's what humans do. We remember our friends. The aftermath of the Battle of Kalara Prime, as historians would later name it, changed the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. The young species from Earth had proven they would stand against impossible odds for their principles. They had shown that courage and determination could challenge even the most powerful empires. The Vorthon Empire never officially admitted defeat, but they never returned to Kailari space. Other species took note that humans, despite their limited resources and young civilization, had stood where others had cowered. Trade agreements, alliance offers, and diplomatic overtures flooded Earth's communication channels. The Kalari kept their promise. They shared their vast knowledge with humanity, accelerating human technological development by centuries. medical advances that extended human life, engineering principles that made interstellar travel safer and faster, and philosophical insights that helped humanity find its place in a vast and complex galaxy. But perhaps the most important outcome was the precedent it set. The galaxy learned that humans would remember both kindness and cruelty, that they would honor their debts regardless of the cost, and that they would stand for what was right even when standing seemed impossible. Admiral Elena Vasquez retired after the battle, returning to Earth where she spent her remaining years teaching at the academy. She would often tell her students about a cargo run that had been interrupted by a distress signal, and how answering that call had led to humanity's finest hour. When she died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 93, her funeral was attended by representatives from dozens of species. Zalara herself came to Earth for the first time, speaking at the ceremony about the human who had saved her people twice, once with compassion and once with courage. The memorial erected in Elena's honor bore a simple inscription that became humanity's unofficial motto among the stars. We remember our debts, we stand with our friends, we choose the harder right over the easier wrong. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about the young species from Earth. Humans might be new to the cosmic stage, but they brought with them something that transcended technology or military might. They brought the willingness to risk everything, for others to stand against darkness not because victory was certain, but because standing was right. And in the vast darkness between stars where civilizations rose and fell like waves on an endless ocean, that kind of light was the rarest treasure of all.